And adding insult to Erdogan's crumbling Ottoman ambitions is France, or a French magazine rather, one that is at the center of the Islamic backlash against Emmanuel Macron. Charlie Hebdo, what has it done now? It has published a searing caricature of the Turkish president. In fact, calling it searing might be an understatement. It is quite scandalous. The cartoon depicts a scantily dressed Erdogan drinking beer and lifting the skirt of a woman wearing a hijab. Turkey is mighty upset with this cartoon. The Turkish government and its officials are outraged. They have flooded Twitter with threads condemning the cartoon, and they want nothing less than an apology from Charlie Hebdo for such blatant disrespect of their president. What about Mr. President himself? Has he responded? Yes and no. He says that he has nothing to say against such quote-unquote scoundrels. His words, take a look.
I haven't even looked at this caricature, even only to see what these immoral publications are or to consider them. I find it completely unnecessary. Who am I after all? There is no need for me to say anything about such scoundrels who insult my beloved prophet on such a scale.
He may have chosen not to comment on the cartoon, but Erdogan had a lot to say about the enemies of Turkey, which he considers to be the enemies of Islam, as if the two were synonymous. Last we checked, Turkey was a secular country, at least on paper. Erdogan said the enemies are drowning in a swamp of hatred in the name of freedom. Who are these enemies? The whole of Europe, according to him.
I believe that the enemies of Turkey and Islam have gone to drown in a swamp of hatred and animosity in the name of freedom. These are signs that Europe is going back to barbaric times. Will we renounce our honor for them? Will we look the other way because of them? Some might be able to do that. But the Turkish people cannot take an immoral approach in the face of any attack on their faith and values.
The Turkish people are not really the only ones questioning European morality. The entire Islamic world seems to be up in arms. There are protests against France in almost every Islamic country or every country with Muslims. In Bangladesh, protesters burnt effigies of Emmanuel Macron for the second consecutive day. In Somalia, protesters burnt the French flag and vowed to boycott French goods. In Pakistan too, protesters chanted "Down with France" slogans and burnt posters of President Macron. And in Palestine, protesters demonstrated outside the French Cultural Center and vowed to hurt the French economy with a boycott. Palestine. What about Islamic leaders? Do they share the same sentiments as these protesters? Do they share the same sentiments as Erdogan? Well, some of them do. Like the Iranian president, Hassan Rouhani, in a recent meeting, Rouhani warned France that insulting the prophet may encourage violence and bloodshed. Listen to this.
Insulting the prophet is no achievement. It's immoral, it's encouraging violence. Inciting millions and billions around the world, Muslims and non-Muslims. This is no achievement. It's a surprise that this would come from those claiming culture and democracy, that they would somehow, even if unwanted, encourage violence and bloodshed. Which part of freedom's definition is giving up on ethics?
We wonder where these ethics go when it comes to China's atrocities on Muslims. We've discussed this before, so we won't dwell on the atrocities. We'll come to China in a bit. The point here is that the Islamic world's falling out with France is deepening. In Russia, Chechenya's strongman, the leader, Ramzan Kadyrov, has compared the French president to a terrorist whose actions could have, quote-unquote, tragic consequences. Then we have countries like the Maldives. The foreign ministry there says that it is deeply concerned about the increase in rhetoric against Islam. Even Saudi Arabia, the de facto leader of the Islamic world, has reprimanded the French government. Riyadh has condemned the conflation of Islam with terrorism. I have a lot to say about Riyadh too, but some other time maybe. Let's cut the long story short. The Islamic world has united against Emmanuel Macron. The sentiments are strong, the anger is growing, it might be moving towards action. And there's one country that is too eager to prove itself as the torchbearer of this anti-France movement. One country that has been making more noise than it should be and has once again ended up with a foot in its mouth. The country is Pakistan. And you have to listen to what happened. The Pakistan National Assembly recently demanded that Islamabad recall its ambassador to France. It passed a unanimous resolution saying their ambassador should be called back. But the lawmakers forgot one little detail. Pakistan has no ambassador in France. The one it did was transferred to China. So who exactly were they planning to call back? Well, we don't know, and it's safe to assume they don't know either. As for France, its president is set to deliver a televised address in a few hours from now. He's expected to touch upon the rising anti-France sentiments, and we do hope Pakistan finds some answers in his speech. At the same time, we fervently hope that Pakistan and the rest of the Islamic world shows 1% of this outrage against China too. Not only for what the Chinese state is doing to the Uyghur Muslims, but also what the Chinese state-run media is doing. CCTV recently broadcast an entire portrait of Prophet Muhammad in a TV series. The images are going viral. They're from a TV show on ancient Chinese history. In one of the episodes, an Arab ambassador visiting China during the Tang dynasty gifts a portrait of the Prophet Muhammad to the Chinese emperor. Now here's the thing. They may or may not have exchanged portraits as gifts, but Islam prohibits any kind of depiction of Prophet Muhammad. The Islamic world is boycotting French products over this. Will they do the same for Chinese products? Will they boycott Chinese products? Will Imran Khan recall the Pakistani ambassador to China? We know the answer, but we will keep asking the question. Thank you for watching Gravitas on WION's YouTube channel. If you want to stay up to date with what's happening around the world, then subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like and share. Thank you very much for watching WION. World is One.